This is a challenge to creationists, or more accurately, a challenge to anyone that doesn't believe in evolution. I have a list of things required for evolution to be true. Which one of those do you not believe in? I'll keep this short so it's easy to make a response video to, and let's dive in. Point number 1. We have genes. Yeah, we're starting with the absolute basics. Do you agree that DNA identification is a thing we can do? Then you agree we have DNA. Hell, we can make your DNA visible to the naked eye. Extremely basic, but the ground step. Point number 2. We get our genes from our parents. Yes, still extremely basic. Do you agree that we can determine the father based off genetic identification? Then you agree we get our genes from our parents. Point number 3. Mutations happen. A mutation is just a fancy word for a change in DNA. Be it a point mutation, gene duplication where sections of genes are repeated, gene deletions where sections of genes are removed. We know these happen. No one disputes this. It can happen for a variety of reasons, be it copying errors, radiation, background or other, or genetic recombination in the creation of egg or sperm cell, etc. Point number 4. Genotype leads to phenotype. Genotype is just your genes. Phenotype is how you look, your organs, just your body as a whole. The simplest proof of this are identical twins. If genotype does not dictate phenotype, then the same genotype should not mean the same visual result. Of course, things like personality and fingerprints are not genetically determined, but most things are. And for evidence on a larger, more visual scale, if we change the genes of, for instance, a fly, we can make it grow legs where it's supposed to grow antennae. Point number 5. DNA is a chemical catalyst. This is just definitionally correct. A chemical catalyst is a chemical that takes part in a chemical reaction, but is not used up in the reaction. Organisms are full of catalysts. It's how eating functions. Well, DNA, with the help of other catalysts, allows for the reaction of nucleotides bonding with one another to create a DNA strain. But only the nucleotides are used up, not the original DNA strain. That is the definition of a chemical catalyst. And RNA, due to minor differences compared to DNA, will replicate itself easily with nucleotides. All of this can just be shown. Point number 6. DNA always codes to something. No matter what DNA sequence you have, it can be copied to RNA, which can then be translated to a protein. Well, so long as it has a start codon and the proper pre-area to be used to create mRNA. Even if the protein is completely inert and functionless, it can be created. This is also just plain observed. We have handy charts showing what combination of 3 codons, the supposed letters in the DNA code, result in what amino acid is added next. Unlike computer code, there is no error that can be made that creates an error that crashes the process. The closest analogy is that a mutation can result in the protein ending earlier than is optimal due to a stop codon combination showing up. But that still ends up with a protein, just shorter than it usually is. And even that is a bit incorrect, as there is no standard size of a protein. They range from less than 200 amino acids in length to more than 25,000. So long as DNA catalyzes to mRNA, it always translates to a protein. Point number 7. Organisms get selected based on phenotype. Remember, phenotype is just your body. If you have a group of rabbits that can be black or white in an area where it often snows, the black rabbits will be eaten more often, and so the white rabbits will have more kids. If you have a group of birds where the males can either be dull of color or very colorful, and the females will mate more with the colorful males will have more kids. If you have a group of tomato plants where some grow more and some grow less fruit, the ones with more fruit will be cultivated by humans more, and so they'll have more offspring. This is just observed everywhere. Hell, this was observed in a zoo near me where a population of fish turned more dull in color as the colorful variant got eaten more. If you accept the above, you accept evolution, because this is what evolution is. Mutations, things we observe happening, create diversity in DNA. Diversity in DNA creates diversity in phenotype. Diversity in phenotype creates diversity in selection. The parts of the population that gets more children pass their genes to their kids more. Just read of Wikipedia. Evolution is change in the heritable characteristics of biological populations over successive generations. If you accept the 7 points, then you have to accept that evolution happens. But maybe you accept the above 7 points, but still don't believe in evolution. But for that to make sense, you'll have to invoke something else. I know 3 things that are generally put forth. Point number 1. There is only variation within kind and never further. If this was the case, we would have never bred Chihuahuas out of wolf-like ancestors, as those wolf-like ancestors did not have Chihuahua size in the genetic pool. This is explained with point 3. Mutations happen. For the example of the Chihuahua, humans artificially selected for smallness. Then mutations happened, expanding the gene pool and creating more variety within the pool of the smallest dogs, which included even smaller dogs, which could then be selected for, which led to a new, smaller population. And that repeated. So, why did we never grow huge cows? Well, mostly because that would be impractical. Larger takes more time to grow, more food to grow, more force to control, more space to hold, etc. And there are just physical limitations. A standard body plan can only support animals of a certain size, and different respiratory systems have different limitations. But there only being genes for certain selection is just not a problem due to mutation. Point number 2 that is brought up against evolution is thermodynamics. This is a really dumb point that some people like to bring up because it sounds smart if you don't know a lot. So in thermodynamics there is this thing called entropy. Overly simplified, it's the amount of energy in a system that's unavailable for work. So for instance, if you have a lamp that works on a battery and you use it for a while, some of the energy has been used up and is now unavailable to do anything as it was used for the light, which turned into heat by being absorbed, or wasted in the process of making light. Yes, it sounds rather complex. A different explanation is chaos. It's far less accurate and explains far less. And it's the explanation that people that try to use thermodynamics against evolution tend to go for. The explanation they go for is generally something like this. Thermodynamics tells us that everything increases in chaos. Chaos is bad. Mutations are a form of this chaos. How can chaos organize new structures? This is very wrong. You see, in thermodynamics, entropy only increases in isolated systems. An isolated system is where all things that interact with things in the system are part of the system. No material from outside, no energy from outside. But genes are not isolated systems. Organisms aren't isolated systems. Organisms absorb matter and energy from their surroundings. The process of digestion, eating, increases the amount of entropy. Thus, thermodynamics are in no way a problem for evolution. Hell, thermodynamics would predict life forms out of non-living material as life increases entropy way faster than a lack of life. Compare how long it takes for a sugar cube to fall apart if you make sure nothing living touches it, compared to how long it takes if an animal gets its hands on it and digests it. Thermodynamics is only used as an argument because it's more complicated than most laymen understand. And it's easy to misexplain while hitting enough keywords that laymen can't pick up on it being misexplained. Point number 3 against evolution is the gene code barrier. This one is basically the same as point 1, except it's trying to be harder. This is saying that there is a limit to how far things can evolve. Often this is paired with vague, undefined words like kind. That things can evolve within their kind, but can't evolve beyond their kind. But if you ask them what a kind is, they won't be able to tell you. But there is a big difference between this and point 1. Point 1 just says that the genetic code doesn't exist. But what doesn't exist yet can start to exist due to mutations. This gene code barrier says that there is something stopping certain genes from developing in certain animals. If this is true, then, we would still have evolution on the smaller scale that we can all see, but it would remove evolution as the explanation to the biodiversity we see in the world. The problem is that this is a claim, a new claim. Unlike my list of 7, there is no evidence that I've ever seen or heard of such a gene code barrier. The best I heard is common sense. But common sense is good at keeping you alive and solving basic problems in day-to-day life. Common sense tells you that heavier objects fall faster, but in a vacuum, they don't. Common sense tells you that you can't create an interference pattern with yourself. But the double split experiment shows that that is wrong. Common sense doesn't help you much in science, since a lot of things stop making common sense once you look closely at them. So, if you don't believe in evolution, tell me, what part do you not believe in? Do we not have genes? Do we not get our genes from our parents? Do mutations not happen? Does genotype not lead to phenotype? Is DNA not a chemical catalyst? Does mRNA that starts with a start codon not always translate into a protein? Or do organisms not get selected? Or do you have some new, never seen before reason to believe in a gene code barrier or a similar natural phenomenon that stops mutations from happening? I want to hear. I'll be active in the comments, both here and to any replies I learn of. And especially if it's the last one. If you have evidence for the gene code barrier, let me know so we can become rich together. Until then, this has been Octavia, saying farewell.